Welcome to module 5, legs. Controversial topic because it's, I would say, misunderstood. Okay, you basically have two parts of your leg when you talk to development. You have the quad and the hamstring, and then I guess you could say the glute. Which we'll talk about. And the glute and the hamstring do tie in together, but a lot of people out there think that the most effective exercise for the leg is squatting. I'm not going to say that squatting is not a beneficial exercise in some way, but also there are certain people that are not meant to squat based on the size of their femur length and their torso, because when they will then tend to squat, their upper body tends to be bent over because of the force of the bar on them, and you have all the force goes into their spinal erectors, their hips, and their glutes. So they're not working their quads at all, but everybody thinks it is a quad exercise. During a squat, you will engage your hips, your glutes, your hamstrings, and your quads. So when you squat, you're actually only going to bend the lower leg 30 degrees. So how much resistance are you going to put on that quad? Not as much as you would with a leg extension, because on a leg extension, you will get literally, I would say, somewhere about 100, 120 degrees of flexion within your knee. So squatting is not the best exercise to do. Not to say that I don't do it, because I know there's a risk and a benefit. There is a way that I work around it, which is a goblet squat, which I will have Steve demonstrate. What Steve is going to demonstrate now is called a goblet squat. The reason it's called a goblet squat is because you can see his hands are like holding a huge goblet. Notice his elbows are close to his body, okay, and his palms are facing up. He has his feet, his heels elevated slightly on a plate. Now, you can see now, based on the position he's in, he's going to actually be able to feel it much more in the quad than he would a regular squat with a bar on his back. In addition, a bar on somebody's back is an unnatural movement for the body, puts the shoulder in an impinged fashion. So he's going to now just squat down with that weight. Notice the flexion he's getting in his knee much more than a regular squat, because the weight being in front of him, most of the resistance is on the quad. And there is very little spinal erector engagement. And with his heels elevated, it puts even more pressure on the quad. The elbows are close to his body. The weight is close to his body. Notice the speed that he's going. He's going down at a very, very slow pace. And he pauses at the bottom, just like with every exercise. There is the concentric, the contraction, the eccentric. Okay, now what Steve is going to demonstrate is a leg press. Now, I'm not going to say the leg press is 100% quad, but is much more focused on the quad than a squat. We're going to hopefully not engage his spinal erectors, and we're going to focus more on his quad. Now, I will tell you a couple of cues. One, the lower his feet on the plate, the more quad involvement. The higher his feet up on the plate, the more hamstring involvement. Also, when you're leg pressing, you want your first and second toe to be able to track correctly right over in the kneecap. So if you take a look at my leg, if my leg is like this and I'm doing the leg press, notice my knee is going one direction, my feet are another. That is like opening and closing a car door and leaning on the hinge. Eventually, you're going to spring that hinge. So you want to track correctly. So here, this is tracking correctly. See, that knee is over that first and second toe. So Steve is going to focus on his quad, so it's going to be much lower on the plate itself. Notice he's not locking out, which keeps all the resistance on that quad at all times. He's tracking correctly and driving. Now, there are many, many different types of leg presses, some better than others. Good, Steve. Okay, so the number one best exercise for the quad, as unsexy as it is a leg extension. because you're gonna, the only muscle that's gonna be working during that exercise is the quad. And you're gonna get literally somewhere, depending on the machine, somewhere between 90 and 100 degrees of flexion. All right? So I'm gonna have Steve demonstrate it, and I will speak in the background. Basically, your legs are gonna come out as you sit there, and you want very little, no hip involvement. So you make sure that your knees are coming in. Now he's driving forward. And people ask what my foot position would be. And what I will say is that if I cut your feet off, could you still do a leg extension? And the answer is yes. So it doesn't matter. They shouldn't be, flexed or they shouldn't be flexed in any way. Notice it comes all the way down, all the way up, contracts the quad. Also, his seat position, he's seated back far enough so he can get even more flexion. Not too far up, not too far back. Notice the only thing that is moving is his knee joint. The only thing that's flexing here is his knee joint. And this, of course, is knee extension. Quad inserts at the knee and at the hip. And it's put on your body so you can extend your leg. Okay, now we're going to talk about the hamstring, the back part of the leg, which is put on your body. It's a leg bicep, so you can actually flex your leg like this. Okay, there are two basic exercises to be able to work the hamstring. First is the lying leg curl, which we don't have here. But the key on a lying leg curl, just like a bicep, okay, when you do a bicep curl, and I'll show you, you don't want that elbow to move forward. Because what? The shoulder movement. Similarly, when you're doing the lying leg curl, you do not want your hips to come up, because then you're taking all the pressure off the hamstring and it's on the glute and the hip. So you want to drive your hips into that pad and didn't do it leg curl. What we have here is a seated leg curl, and anybody with back problems would probably tend to use this piece of equipment. All right, so Steve is going to demonstrate it, and I will dictate around it. Notice he has the pad is now across his upper quads. His seat is positioned in the machine correctly. He's not too far back. He's not too far forward, where you can see where his ankles are. So he actually can flex the hamstring. So the key here, just like the lying leg curl that I spoke about, is keeping the hips down. So his hips will not raise off that pad. So what he's going to do is going to curl down and contract that hamstring at the bottom. There's the eccentric, concentric, peak contraction. Notice the speed as you go. It's pure hamstring. Or like what we call in the business leg bicep. And notice your feet positioning has nothing to do with it either. Because again, if I cut your feet off, you can still do a leg curl. Notice the only thing that is moving is his lower leg, which is flexing. Nothing else is moving on his body. Good, Steve. Okay, now we're going to work the hamstring and the glute, because they kind of tie in together. A phenomenal exercise, if done correctly, is the slightly bent knee, stiff-legged deadlift. So it's stiff-legged, it thinks that your knees are going to be locked. They're going to be slightly bent. The key on this is you're pivoting from the hip, not from the back. Also the key on this is that you're not coming fully up to the upright position. You're going to be slightly bent over because you want to keep tension on that glute and hamstring versus putting the resistance on the spinal erectors. And Steve will demonstrate. So notice he's now going to bend from the hip. Knees are slightly bent. Goes over until he is fully stretched. He comes up and he's engaging his hamstrings and his glutes. And notice he is not standing fully erect. Notice how his back is flat. It's not rounded. And you can see how he's engaging his hamstrings and where the glute ties in. This is done with dumbbells. Perfect. Again, notice now he's not standing directly. He's keeping that tension on the hamstring as well as the glute. And he's actually contracting his glute at the top. Again, his back is nice and flat. The pivoting is the key, is from his hip. Now, the distance that someone will travel will be different based on each individual and their anatomical structure. Good, Steve. Perfect. Okay, to wrap things up, when it comes to leg training, I'm going to talk about something called the sissy squat, but there's nothing sissy about it. A regular squat, as we said, the lower leg is only rotating 30 degrees. With the sissy squat, you're going to put so many more pounds of pressure just with body weight, be able to rotate many more degrees with the lower leg, which I will demonstrate. I notice that I am holding on to something stable, okay? And watch as I demonstrate how I do this. So I'm going to squat down, but I'm going to sort of squat forward. I'm going to sit back. So I'm squatting like this. And you see I'm coming up on my toes, but take a look at the rotation of my quads and then coming back up. Lot of pressure on those quads, huge amount. Okay, I do not suggest anybody doing this on their own without somebody who's a trainer who knows how to do a sissy squat, because this could be screwed up in so many ways.